and it's even easier to take their money from them and use it for your purposes. We saw that happen in the last big tax reform that the state did in 2012. You remember what happened? All of a sudden you had a brand new way of doing your car tax. It took the sales tax off of it, and they added a different sort of alternative ad valorem tax to your motor vehicle. But what wasn't at the forefront of that discussion, at least facing people in Georgia, is what they were going to do with the money. They took the money and they said, okay, well, from every tag that we get this alternative tax from, we're going to take 70% of it. And they only got a fraction of it before. And what they did, they filled up the rainy day fund that had been expended during the downturn. And then it took us several years fighting after they filled it back up to say, hey, look, we've got to be made whole. We've lost the sales tax on it, and we're not getting made whole from what we were back in 2011. And finally got that changed just a couple of years ago. That was a hard fight that I had to be part of when I started GMA. But that's an example of what can happen. And that was what was happening in the early 30s when our association came about. The state was looking to clamp down on the city's abilities and dig into the purses and pocketbooks of the municipal governments. So advocacy is kind of the core pillar. And so that means that we represent all of you at the Capitol as a whole. And the way that we're organized is through these different committees that we have set up, but they're really different policy areas. In the Georgia Code, the Georgia Code is broken up into 40, 50 different sections, but for our purposes, we have these 6 areas: community development, environment and natural resources, municipal government, public safety, revenue and finance, and transportation. So each of your government relations staff is assigned to one of these areas, and each of those areas may cross over, 3 or 4 different committees in the House and the Senate that they have to keep track of during the legislative session. So lots of work is being done on your behalf to protect your ability to serve your constituents at the General Assembly. Now, the legislative session just ended. We're in the time frame where the governor has 40 days to either sign, veto, or not sign legislation. And so in that window, it's not going to do much good to go to the website for seeing what's happening with bills, because the session is over. But if you go to our website and you click on legislative session, it will take you to the list of bills that we are actively pursuing, either to support or fight against. And some bills that we remain neutral on, but we know that's of interest to our members. And so you can go there and kind of scroll through those things and email your government relations person attached to that issue at any point and ask questions, and they'll get back to you as soon as they can. So, service, imagine that being our second core value. That's kind of a given. We do as much for you as we possibly can without doing it for you. And so our problem is that we've got cities of greatly, radically different sizes. And so over 75% of our cities are less than 5,000 population, which y'all fall into. So we have to supply resources there, more so oftentimes than we do for the bigger cities, because they've got staff to take on some of the challenges that are associated with those bigger cities. So we're happy to serve, but that is our challenge, is that our members range from population of 26 to whatever the world Atlanta's population is now. So of the services that we provide, we have in-house services, and then we have services that we contract out for. And some of them work for your city, and some of them may not, just based on the types of businesses that you have, or the geographic position, or the size of your city. So employee benefits are our in-house services that we provide. And we do life and health, risk management, workers' comp, and from that is where we gain the ability, to serve a greater audience by having as many of y'all in those programs that are started for you, using them and generating more money so that we can do more for our members. But each of these programs are tailored for the cities. The defined benefit program, it's got over half of our members in it. It's got a whole bunch in assets. Members get all sorts of things associated with it, including legal services and administrative help if you're part of the defined benefit program. And there is the defined contribution that you would set up yourself and work to fit your community, which also includes all of these other things here: medical insurance, telemedicine, dental health, vision insurance, life insurance, short-term disability. You can kind of mix and match to serve your basic need. The firefighter cancer insurance fund. Y'all have fire? No. Well, this is another thing that was kind of thrust upon us through the legislative process. We came up with this model for an insurance fund to help the firefighters, because they were about to force us, the General Assembly was about to force us to use workers' comp. And that model would not have worked at all. It would have busted our program very quickly. And this one was more cost effective and we worked with the firefighters to set it up. But this is an example of how Georgia led across the country, because we're the ones that came up with this idea, and all of the states were doing the same thing for their cities, at least trying to figure this issue out. And so they used this model in a lot of different states, the ones that hadn't already forced it on workers' comp. So we got a lot of praise for that. And you got the OPEB benefits, retirement, and then the risk management and risk management services. There's a lot of stuff that goes with that. If you're part of workers' comp and you're part of risk management, y'all are part of workers' comp as far as I saw. But if you're in both, you could double the amount that you receive for the grants that we have. And so there's grants that you can get into with the risk management services, where you can get apply for the grant for actual material for your police and fire, if you have police and fire. So like I said, some of this stuff applies to some cities and others it doesn't. Do y'all have police? Yeah. So for police cars and any materials that they may need, those that grant, you can apply for that every year, depending on what your needs are, and folks get it all the time. So loss control, that's part of the local government risk management services as well. Here's a list of all of the go-tos for you for each of the services. And there's revenue opportunities, and this is where we start talking about the services where we hire out for, where we've identified a business or somebody that understands a situation so well that we contracted with them to supply the service to cities. Alcohol beverage excise tax, that one is becoming more popular because of the changes that have happened in the alcohol code over the past 10 years. It's really opened up, and breweries and distilleries are very popular, opening up across the state. And so more and more people are looking into using that. It helps audit and identify, whether or not the sales of alcohol the taxes are actually coming back in the right amount. The way that those taxes are collected is a little bit, it's hard for a city to audit by themselves. They have to have somebody else do it because it takes so much time. So that's a service that's being used more and more frequently. The delinquent insurance license fees collection, I think that's something that everybody uses that's a member. It's just one of the things that kind of automatically enrolled in, I believe. Property damage revenue recovery service. If you have a bunch of city property that gets damaged in a given year or over a certain amount of time, probably be good to look into it. But it's an audit of all the different times where an accident has destroyed public property, and by entering into this, anything that they can get back for you, they just take a little percentage of it. So I don't think it costs anything up front for you to enroll in that particular service. But just depends on how much of your property ended up getting busted up over a period of years, and they can go back in time to audit it. Gov Deals, I think y'all are part of that. It's an online auction service, and you can sell your surplus and older stuff there. You're trying to upgrade. Hotel Motel tax recovery service. Your city's growing and you got a hotel or two, or if you've got an attraction that is pulling folks to rent their spaces out for a short-term rental. That's another piece where if you don't have a hotel motel tax, you might consider it in the future if you start to realize that there are people out there doing it, because you'd end up getting money that way. But for this service, it speaks directly to hotel motels and auditing them, making sure that they are remitting the local tax properly. And this service, for the folks that use it, it ends up working out better for the hotels and the city, because the process, it's like they kind of hand deliver everything already in like an Excel format straight from the hotels, and the hotel has a one-stop shop with who they're dealing with. They don't have to worry about turnover. And so the folks that are in that program really like it. Purchasing and financing services. Y'all are part of the natural gas service, and that's a really good. It's really good for the folks that are on the gas line, because you have to be on the gas line to actually participate in the service. But yeah, you definitely see some rewards there from the aggregated purchasing. And then there's an actual aggregated purchasing service for big purchases of equipment and materials. If you ever need to do that, that is an option. Home Depot. If you've got a Home Depot nearby, it is a good idea to be part of this Home Depot Government Solutions. You'll not only be opening up the deals that they offer for the cities, you get 3% back at the end of the year. So if there's materials that you're going through, toilet paper, whatever it is, stuff that you buy weekly, monthly, that program, you'll end up getting money back, and that's another program that doesn't cost anything to be part of. And we have recently had some talks with Home Depot to ensure that it's easy to transition into, to enroll in. But it's a way to get money back. You just have to make sure that you're actually using it. sometimes it's easier to go to somewhere else. It's supposed to maybe Lowe's or something like that. Equipment and real estate financing program. You're doing you have to build a facility, new city hall or a recreation facility or anything like that. We can get you good rates. So that's definitely something to look into if and when you decide you need to build. So that's kind of the services, broadly. Does anybody have any questions about any of those things before we go into the third pillar?
Michael, I have a question for you. You were speaking about the alcohol excise tax. My question is that by the drink pour, or is that in reference to liquor stores? I didn't understand.
So that particular one is by the drink pour.
Okay.
Okay, but there is, so when you institute an alcohol tax, you're instituting it on both. And I think you choose the rate. It's up to a very small amount. But that particular one is on your actual report.
Okay.
And then some of the other things that are going on in that realm, with the introduction of so many breweries and distilleries, they've been given the option and the opportunity to sell directly from their brewery or their distillery. And so that's a question that we have with DOR. Who does that auditing? Because the way that the tax is remitted now, whether it's by the pour from a restaurant or a bar, or from the grocery store, it's the wholesaler that's remitting the tax to DOR. But in this case, the sales out the door from the brewery or the distillery are coming straight out the door, but they're required to pay the tax. So we know DOR is going to get theirs, but there's no path for them to collect and remit to us, the city. So that's something you have to be conscious of. You have to have those conversations if one opens up in your area to make sure that they're paying what they ought.
Michael, I want to go back. You were talking. One of those screens was hotel motel tax.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, a year or so ago, we were discussing this because of the Airbnbs, like in Hoschton, and if they're paying us, but we're not collecting that. Is that true? Kind of refresh my memory here on this, because I'm assuming that.
So here's how it works.
Tell us how it works.
If Jackson County has a tax on the books, and you don't, they are collecting their tax in your jurisdiction on all your hotels and all your Airbnb-like facilities that are remitting tax. When you institute a tax, you have the option of choosing the rate that you impose, and you can institute that tax up to 5% by yourselves through an ordinance. If you go 6, 7, or 8%, then you have to go to the General Assembly. You have to go to your delegation and ask them to pass it for you, because that's their purview. The higher you go, once you get into the 3%, 4%, 5% range, and 6% and better, you have more and more obligations with parts of the tax. So 3% and less, it's all general funds. Anything more than that, it starts to tick up on your responsibilities with portions of the money. You have to use the money for tourism product development. And the idea is that you're promoting your community and the highlights surrounding your community, so that you can bring more folks to the area, so there'll be more heads and beds, is what the idea is. But that's how that tax works.
So how is it collected? I mean,
it's a local tax.
Yeah, I mean, how's that actually funneled back to the city?
So with the Airbnb, the law that passed that says they have to collect, it would there's two pathways. So with the law itself, when you're talking about Airbnb or VRBO or any of the big guys, once they do business in a state in the year before or that year, and they cross over $100,000 threshold, or they have 100,000 nights worth of stay or something like that, they've crossed the threshold and they have to remit the tax following year. Those guys, the big ones, have all done it. Right? So they're the ones that are sending Jackson County money for any Airbnb that's in your neck of the woods.
Even in our city?
Yeah. Because
So
if
Jackson
you don't
County,
have a hotel motel tax, you're not telling them that they have to pay it.
but Jackson County's getting that money for what would be in the city?
Because that's how the tax works. If Jackson County has imposed a tax, then it applies across the board until a city imposes one on its jurisdiction. Yeah.
So if we put one in, that would really be irrelevant to Jackson County. They're still gonna get their share.
They're still gonna get their share from the rest of the,
And then
from
we
the rest
would,
of the
then we would,
unincorporated
it'd be
county.
like an additional tax on the tenant,
That
basically.
we
Well,
would.
it would be
That
additional.
That we
It
would.
could be less. So here's how that works. I don't know what Jackson County's rate is, but we can find out in about 5 seconds, because it's all on the DCA website.
Let's just say it's 2%,
It's not 2%, but let's say it's 6%.
okay?
Y'all do 3%. Y'all are telling the folks, the Airbnb folks, that you're going to give them a tax break by passing the ordinance, or 4%, because you're imposing a lower tax, and they do not have to pay the Jackson County tax.
Okay, so Jackson County be cut out of it.
That's why I was wondering.
Just in your jurisdiction.
Oh, okay, I was thinking they would still get their part, plus then we would add one. and
No.
So cause I remember when you and I and Gary were talking about this, it was amazing of how many really Airbnbs were going on in Houston. It was a surprising
here's the
number,
other
I don't
trick.
remember the number.
Here's the other trick. If you got a hotel motel tax and you don't have a short-term rental ordinance, if we own the property and we're short-term rentaling it in your city, but we don't use one of those platforms, just imposing the tax ain't gonna get you the money, unless we feel like paying it. See.
Well, see, that's what we're coming across right now, the business license for those.
Yeah. So that's
They
the.
don't just openly come and say, hey.
Right, so that's the benefit of having a short-term rental ordinance, is you define the parameters of them doing that business, saying, yeah, you're operating a business, you need to have a business license, and you need to remit the tax. Now, I mean, by definition, technically, state law requires them to pay a hotel motel tax regardless, the actual person doing it. The law that passed that requires the Airbnbs of the world pay covers them because they're going to remit the tax to the Airbnb. But if we're not using Airbnb and we're running it off of our website like we've always done for 30 years as bed and breakfast, until you come knock on the door, may not even realize we should pay you.
We're leaving the money on the table here. However much money it is, whether it be $100 or $10,000, we're leaving money on the table here. Jackson County's getting it, we're not, and they're our residents.
Yeah, and
They're using our services.
That's the trick of that tax, and it hasn't raised as much money as people thought it would in a lot of areas. And the problem with that legislation that makes the what are they called, facilitation platforms pay is they can't be audited. They can, but it's not easy to do. It's virtually impossible to really audit your city's collections through the platform. So that's what a short-term rental ordinance could do for you. If you require them to register annually, you'll know how many are out there, and you'll be able to act on the ones that are not doing right, because the folks that are will be mad at them. They'll find out faster than you will.
Well, the day will come, there'll be a hotel in Houston, and that may 1 year or 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
It's something to start looking, but there's Airbnbs now, for sure. I'll ask Al, but we get with him and just start looking into it.
Yeah, I just text Jerry, about,
Yeah,
us put that in an ordinance for
yeah,
it.
shouldn't be too difficult.
Mhm.
We ought to get those wheels turning, cause
Right.
the money's being paid, we need to get our share of it.
A good conversation to have would be to start up talks with the folks that own them and just say, hey, we just wanna see, had any complaints yet? It doesn't sound like you've had any. And we just wanna make sure that we're all on the same page and, if there's anything we can do for you, sort of conversation. Because they might come where somebody makes you look bad and we wanna know who's out there doing it right. And, start it off on a good foot with them. Because when somebody has a problem when it relates to their short-term rentals, it's a big problem. They could go south real fast. One night they could make a bad news story happen for any number of reasons. So that would be my suggestion is to try to get an idea of who they are and just start a conversation with them and see what all their needs are and let them know what you think about it. Any other things I touched
I
on?
wanna make sure I don't get this wrong, but if there's an Airbnb owner in Hoschton and they're renting it out nightly or short-term rentals, 1 night, 10 nights, whatever it might be, the customer is paying them through Airbnb or VRBO, whatever it might be. But the taxes are getting charged at that point.
Mhm.
The owner of the home, it's somewhat irrelevant to them, isn't it?
What do you mean?
Well, the owner's the one that's getting paid.
But the money, but they're not getting the tax revenue. That,
So who's getting
the
that
taxes are
tax?
getting charged to the customer.
Yeah.
So the owner's getting their share, VRBO's getting their share, and Jackson County's getting their share.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Hopefully Jackson County's getting their share.
Alright, but from what my conversation was a year ago, it seemed like the money was being paid, that VRBO was like, hey, we're paying this money, well, why aren't y'all getting it? Because the owner's really got nothing to say about that, right?
No. Once the owner has just opened their place up.
For
And
business.
they've said, here's how much I want to charge. And then Airbnb, VRBO, whoever, they tack on their
Fees.
fee. And then I think they tack on another fee on the other side. So they're getting it from both sides. They're getting it from the rent. And then, the tax is paid, the owner never sees the tax.
Alright.
VRBO remits the tax to the local government itself because it's a local tax. DOR does not remit hotel motel tax. DOR collects sales tax for the locals and remits the sales tax to you
Right.
through SPLOST split and your loss split. But hotel motel is a locally imposed tax, and so it goes directly back to Jackson County, or if y'all imposed a hotel motel tax, Hoschton.
But you were making the statement about us as a city going to these people that own these VRBOs. I'm at a loss why.
Oh, just to start the conversation, if you're interested in understanding, how many are out there and starting to talk about a short-term rental ordinance, you're gonna find them come to the meeting real quick. People that don't live in your community are gonna end up coming to your meetings. So conversation with the folks that are there, the folks that live in your community and have buy-in. Those folks are the ones you want a relationship with. You're gonna find out that, if there's a bunch of them, chances are, a good percentage of them are owned by somebody that may not even be in the state. That's the problem that raised its head this legislative session, where the folks are trying to do those, build for rent neighborhoods.
Yeah, we've been approached with it.
Yeah.
I mean, we were
Yeah,
a year ago.
but they've already done it. Those same folks have already done it with the short-term rental process. So, I mean, they're keeping up the houses. They're not gonna be a problem with being an eyesore, but depending on, you know, if you kind of poll them, if you start having that conversation with folks you know do it, chances are they know somebody else. Those are the folks you want, you know.
When you use the word short-term rental, is that a legal definition? Is that something like a week, less than 30 days?
It's less than 15 days.
Less than 15 days?
No. So there is no definition in the code yet.
Well, in our code, I just asked our city planner, he said we don't have, I mean, it's prohibited to have short-term rental, and he put parentheses less than 15 days, which is defined as commercial lodging.
So the state code says anything, less than 29 days, you gotta remit hotel motel tax. And so if that's in your ordinance.
That's in our code, yeah.
Yeah, and so that would make it illegal for them to rent for less than 15 days as far as the way it read. Yes,
We're gonna start digging into this.
I told him, I said, we need to start talking about this.
Well, I think you can identify a handful just by doing a Google search that put themselves
In
on.
the area.
yeah. Yeah.
But I think one of the things we're talking about is by updating our ordinance where I think they don't see themselves as, they're registered with VRBO, whatever, they don't realize they're operating a business.
Right.
So they need to pay a business license fee.
That's exactly
And
right.
that's what I just told him, I said, they're not paying business license either.
And they need to.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the folks, especially locals, that's what I'm saying. You want to have a conversation with your residents, people have buy-in in your community, because they're not doing this to nefarious, you know, to get around it. They just see an opportunity and, hey, I can rent my house, make some money, it's awesome, you know? The other folks, they're gonna try to come get you, and those are the folks that are buying up houses all over the place, and, you know, that's the danger, you know?
And that's happening.
Yeah, and that's happening. So you want if you're gonna open it up to allow it, you're gonna have a short-term rental ordinance. You want their buy-in. You want their input as you're doing it. Just a good idea all the way around. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other things that I covered? Stop for it. So innovation, third core value, and we do lots of trainings and lots of education all around the state. You know, folks that were involved in the newly elected officials training, y'all probably up there in Athens. We did one a couple weeks later in Tifton. But we do lots of different trainings. We have local trainings in the fall and in the spring. And then this year we've got Small Cities Conference coming up. Sherry is actually the one running it. So your consultant is the one in charge of it. And it's going to be I think it's in Dublin. I think that's where they're going to have it. Annual convention. If you haven't been to one of our annual conventions, I highly suggest it. It is an awesome time to network. The summer convention is always in Savannah. And we have a whole host of training opportunities there. And a lot of the classes fill up within 15 minutes of the registration going online. And a lot of them are already full, but there's plenty of them that are still open. And so I would look into it if you have the opportunity to go this year. Atlanta, we have the city summit in January. And that's more geared toward the legislature, because the legislature has just kicked off, and that was relatively close to y'all. So if you can't get down to Savannah, come on to the Atlanta conference, and there's plenty of training there as well. But we also have the Municipal Revenue Administrative Certificate Program, the Human Resources Administration Certificate Program. We offer customer service training, budget and finance management training. We do city assessments, supervisory leadership training, And then retreats, we've been doing a lot of those, and we can customize, whatever sort of, training or retreat to your need. And online, on our website, you've got a whole host of resources. There's a giant page on the ARPA funds. We've got a bunch of different publications, one on alcohol, one on the alcohol taxes, loss and SWOS. There's a bunch of different publications online you can look at. The mayor and council member handbook is online, and you just click on each chapter on the website. You can refer to that anytime you have a question. Job listing, sample documents, data tools, just a whole bunch of stuff. So explore the website when you have a chance. And then this is these Georgia Communities Connect. We did have listservs for different folks. So you had the clerk's listserv, and then you had the manager's listserv. And then we decided that was getting top heavy because technology has changed. And so now we have communities, and it operates as a listserv, but you can log in and you can kind of go back in time to kind of dig into the different discussions. And I think there's even a mayor's community too. I'm not sure how many communities we have at this point. I get all of the city managers and city clerks community emails. So it's an awesome resource for those staff, and you can sign up and get into some of these other ones that are based on specific topics like community and economic development and such. And that's the front page of our website. You can do a search on the far right. Directories, if you ever need to look at look for staff or any of the other different groups of folks, just click on directories, and you've got the staff directory right there. I use that more than anything else on the website. Just trying to figure out who I need to talk to within the organization. But yeah, I mean, it's just chock full of information, and events will get you to all of the scheduled events that are upcoming. So if you're looking for, I don't know what these arrows are getting at. Here we go. So here's the resources tab. But she's got the grants tab selected. So recycling infrastructure grants pulled up. But here's your GMA handbook and publication, sample documents. Fortunately, we don't have model ordinances for every concept out there, but we do have a lot. So that's some tools that you can use. But it's just a sea of information, and you're just gonna have to put your boat in the water. And that's us. That is the folks that represent the different areas of the state. And so Sherry is yours. She represents District 5 and District 7. So she's got a lot of cities on her plate. But all these folks love what they do. Pam is our director, Pam Helton. She's a former city clerk. Emily Davenport's a former finance director. Tiffany Stanley's a former HR director. Stan Brown is a former city manager. He's actually the president of the National Public Works Association right now, so he's running around the country at their events all this past year. That's me. Carol's a former city manager, and so Sherry. So got a whole host of folks to pull from. If I don't know the answer to something, or Sherry doesn't know the answer to something, we can call each other and get you what you need. But yeah, any other questions that you might have for me? If I'm I'll get you
We
the,
appreciate it.
yeah, I'll get you the, a copy of the slides here, so you can refer back to them, and, you know, a lot of this detail when it comes to the legislative stuff, I know it, so.
Yeah.
I was able to give it to you, but with the short-term rental stuff and the Airbnb stuff, we've been in negotiations at the state capitol for the past 10 years, and we're just kind of at a stalemate. There's plenty of legislators that want to open it up for them, and then there's plenty of legislators that realize that it's got to be done by the community. So we've been fortunate enough to kind of keep it at bay so far, but there's been 2 states that have had preemption in that area. I think Arizona and Florida, and both of them had a miserable time because of it. And it's from Mike, it's Arizona, New Mexico one. They had real problems there. I mean, big time problems. Their preemption allowed folks to come in and buy up whole neighborhoods.
Wow.
And so it's the same thing that's happened in Savannah. Savannah's ordinance was put in place to ensure that short-term rentals, because they were so popular, they were done in the historic corridor that they created. Kind of a multi-use corridor right in the middle of town, going back from River Street. And once they instituted it, 2 years later, they had to come back and put caps on every city block because some of the city blocks didn't have any people living there anymore. And so we're seeing the ability to do short-term rental raise the actual value of the property because it's obvious. Yeah, it's obvious. You can make a bunch of money if you're in an area that suits it. Much more than you can make renting it long term. And so we're just having to deal with it. We haven't found the answer yet. But I appreciate your time and
Thank you.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It's a lot of information, that's good, it is, yeah.
Yeah, happy to. You got my card, so happy to answer any questions you may have down the road. Miss Sherry will take care of you too.
It's good, so good.
Yeah.
So, Michael, how did you get sent up here today and not Sherry?
She's sick.
She's sick.
Well,
Her husband's having surgery.
Yeah, she's sick too.
Yeah, her husband had surgery, then she's sick.
Yeah,
Wow.
you wouldn't have wanted her here. We were on a call yesterday, and yeah, she was like, please don't make that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, she is sick, and her husband had a scheduled surgery for next week, and they bumped it up. The doctor came available, and so he was able to get that done today. So we're happy about that.
Where did you drive from?
Sandy Springs.
Terrible.
Yeah, and I'm in the north side of Sandy Springs too. So
Okay.
You'll be home for a while.
yeah, well, I'm going to Gainesville. I'm going to meet with the city manager down there on the way back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
Tell them they got a good attorney.
Yeah.
do that.
He uses our attorney.
I said, yeah, we're the same too.
All right.
I think he does answer to it.
So do y'all wanna take a little 9-minute break until, DDA, 2 o'clock?
If